They say your sister is the one person in this world who will never let you fall. She's the one who holds your secrets like they're sacred, the one who knows every scar on your heart because she was there when most of them were made. She's your first friend, your loudest cheerleader, and the person you trust with your very last breath. I believed that. With everything I had, I believed that. Her name was Nadia, my older sister, my protector, my person. And for 26 years of my life, she was all of those things. She was the one who held my hand at our mother's funeral when I was only 9 years old and couldn't understand why the world had suddenly gone so quiet and cold. She was the one who stayed up with me the night before my wedding, braiding my hair and whispering, "You deserve every beautiful thing, Lila, every single thing." I was Lila, the younger sister, the one who always looked up. We were only 3 years apart, but the way Nadia carried herself, so poised, so confident, so magnetic, she felt like an entire world ahead of me. People were drawn to her, rooms changed when she walked in, and I never resented her for it, not once, because she always pulled me in with her. She never let me stand in the shadow for too long. Or so I thought. My husband's name was Ryan. We had been married for 4 years when everything unraveled. He was successful, kind in his own quiet way, and devoted, or at least that was the version of him I was allowed to see. We had built something together, a home, a business, a life that looked beautiful from the outside, even when the inside had small cracks I was still learning to name. We didn't have a dramatic marriage, no screaming fights, no shattered plates, but there were silences that stretched too long and distance that grew slowly, the way mold does, quietly in the dark, until one day you look up and everything has changed color. I was so focused on trying to save my marriage that I never thought to look at who was standing right beside me the entire time. Nadia was always around. That was normal. That was just Nadia. She came over for dinner twice a week. She and Ryan had always gotten along well, and I loved that. I used to brag about it to my friends. Most women dread family visits, but my husband actually likes my sister. Isn't that lucky? I said that, out loud, to people. I was so blind that I called it luck. There was one evening, I remember it clearly now, though at the time it meant nothing to me, when I came home early from a client meeting that had been canceled. The house was unusually quiet. Nadia's car was in the driveway, which wasn't strange. She had a spare key. She'd had one for years. I walked in calling her name, and she appeared from the kitchen almost too quickly. Ryan came down the stairs a moment later, adjusting his collar. He said he'd just changed out of his work clothes. Nadia said she'd been helping herself to tea. I made a joke about her always raiding my kitchen. We all laughed. I went upstairs to change, and I remember standing in front of my mirror and feeling this strange, hollow pull in my chest, like something is slightly off tune, like a note that almost sounds right but doesn't quite land. I ignored it. I told myself I was tired, stressed, overthinking the way I always did. But what I didn't know that day was that the two people I loved most in this world had already decided I didn't matter enough to protect. It never does it? We expect betrayal to come with fire and noise. We expect to feel the earthquake before the ground opens up. But the truth crept in quietly, the way cold air does through a door left slightly open. And by the time I felt it, I was already freezing. It started with a phone. Ryan had left his personal phone on the kitchen counter one morning. Not his work phone, the other one. The one he always kept in his jacket pocket. I had never had a reason to touch it. I had never been that kind of wife. I trusted him. He had stepped out to take a call in the garden, and I was just moving it aside to wipe the counter when the screen lit up. A message. A single message. Last night was a mistake. We have to stop. Lila can never find out. The contact name was just an initial, N. I stood there, the cloth still in my hand, the counter still wet, and something inside me went very, very still. N. I told myself it could be anyone, a colleague, a friend, a business contact with a messy situation of their own. I told myself I was jumping to something impossible, something grotesque, something that my mind was constructing out of exhaustion and insecurity. But my hands were already unlocking the phone. I don't know how long I stood there reading. It could have been 5 minutes. It could have been an hour. The messages went back 7 months. 7 months of carefully worded texts and deleted conversations that hadn't been deleted carefully enough. There were inside jokes I didn't know. There were references to evenings I thought we'd all spent together, dinners, gatherings that had apparently been something else entirely for the two of them. And then there was one message that destroyed me completely. Ryan had written, "She'll never suspect you. That's what makes this so easy." And Nadia had replied with a single laughing emoji. I put the phone down. I walked to the bathroom. I sat on the cold tile floor, and I did not cry. I couldn't. It was like my body didn't know what sound to make for something this devastating. My sister. My Nadia, the one who braided my hair the night before my wedding, the one who whispered that I deserved every beautiful thing. She had looked me in my eyes week after week and smiled. She had hugged me. She had asked me how my marriage was going and listened to me worry about the emotional distance I felt from Ryan. And she had nodded with such tender concern. She knew exactly why there was distance. She was the reason. When Ryan came back inside, I was sitting at the kitchen table, calm, still. He didn't notice anything at first. He poured himself water, asked what I wanted for dinner, and I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw someone I didn't recognize anymore. Not because he had changed, but because I finally had. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I simply slid the phone across the table and watched his face fall apart. The confession came quickly. They always do once the evidence is undeniable. He said it had been going on for 8 months. He said it was complicated. He said things had been broken between us for a long time. Maybe they had been, but broken things can be repaired. Betrayal cannot be undone. I called Nadia that evening and asked her to come over. She arrived in 20 minutes wearing her usual easy smile. And when she saw Ryan's expression, when she saw mine, that smile faltered for just a moment, just long enough for me to see the guilt underneath it. I asked her one question: how long? She cried. She said she was sorry. She said it had meant nothing. She hated herself. She reached for my hands and I stepped back, not violently, not with rage, just quietly, decisively. And I said the only true thing left to say. You knew exactly what you were doing, every single time. I showed them both out of my house that night, and then I sat alone in the silence that once felt like loneliness, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like the beginning of something. Let me tell you something about a woman who has been shattered from the inside. She doesn't come back the same. She comes back sharper. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. I won't dress them up or make them cinematic. They were quiet, gray, exhausting days where I had to relearn how to breathe without flinching. I had to stop reaching for my phone to call Nadia the way I had done for 26 years without thinking. I had to walk past her photograph in my home and feel the full weight of what it meant that she was gone. Grief doesn't care about who was wrong. It arrives regardless. But I had a life to rebuild, and I had decided, quietly, without revenge in my heart at first, but with absolute clarity in my spine, that I would rebuild it in a way that neither of them could touch. The first thing I did was protect myself. Ryan and I had a joint business venture, a property investment firm we had started together 3 years into our marriage. It had been my idea, my research, my connections. He had the capital, I had built the foundation. I had been too trusting, too absent in the legal structure, assuming marriage was protection enough. It wasn't. I hired the best lawyer I could find, a quiet, methodical woman named Sarah, who looked at our business documents and told me plainly that I had more leverage than Ryan had ever wanted me to realize. The divorce settlement took 5 months. By the end of it, I walked away with my full stake in the firm, the house, which had been purchased with a portion of my inheritance from our mother, something Sarah made very clear in court, and enough financial stability to rebuild without asking anyone for anything. Ryan expected me to crumble. He had expected tears and desperation, and maybe even forgiveness, the way women who are still in love sometimes offer it too soon. What he got instead was a very organized, very prepared woman who had spent 5 months reading every document she had ever signed. He did not get the firm. As for Nadia did not get Ryan either. Whatever they had, built on secrecy and my suffering, could not survive the exposure. Love that grows in the dark rarely survives the light. He ended things with her within weeks of the separation, unwilling to face the public weight of what they had done. Our extended family, our friends, the people who had known us all our lives, they found out. Not because I made a scene, but because the truth has a way of moving, quietly and steadily until it fills every room. She called me 6 months later. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message that was long and tearful and full of words that might have once opened a door in me. She said she missed me every day. She said losing me was worse than losing him. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, just the chance to explain. I listened to it once, and then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, not out of satisfaction, but because I had made a promise to myself in the months of rebuilding that I would stop letting other people's guilt become my burden to carry. Her remorse was hers to live with. My peace was mine to protect. Some people call that cold. I call it finally understanding my own value. Today, I run the firm alone. I have a small team of people I trust, people I chose carefully, people who have never once given me reason to look over my shoulder. The business has grown in ways that even Ryan, with all his capital and confidence, had not managed. I moved into a new home, smaller, simpler, entirely mine. I planted a garden in the back. I don't know why, I had never been a gardener, but something about putting things into the ground and watching them grow felt necessary, felt like proof that even soil that has been turned over and broken apart can still produce something beautiful. I think about Nadia sometimes, not with rage, not anymore, just with a kind of quiet sadness for the version of her that existed before, the one who braided my hair, who held my hand at our mother's funeral, who once, I genuinely believe, loved me. I don't know when she changed. I don't know when I became someone she could use. Maybe I never fully will. But here is what I know. You cannot control who betrays you. You cannot always see it coming. You cannot protect yourself from every person who smiles at you while quietly choosing themselves over everything you mean to them. What you can control is what you do next. You can choose to stay broken, or you can choose to become something the betrayal could not have predicted, something stronger, something wiser, something that does not need to be validated by the very people who underestimated you. They thought I would not survive without them. I did more than survive. I bloomed. And if you are sitting somewhere right now, in the middle of your own quiet devastation, wondering if you will ever feel like yourself again, you will. Not the old self, not the one that trusted too easily or loved without reservation or believed that certain people were simply safe, but a new self, a real self, one that has been tested and has not been destroyed. That version of you is coming. She is already on her way.